Hello, my dear viewers. Today we have March 1st, a traditional review of the events on the fronts of the Ukrainian war. Let's transition to the line of conflict that we have here. We traditionally begin from the Avdiivka sector. Here, our troops as a whole managed to penetrate the enemy's defense line along Orlovka and Tonenko-Berdichi. They are clearing the last two settlements, getting rid of the enemy, and preparing for new attacks. Meanwhile, the enemy understands that our troops will continue their success, realizes that the most dangerous direction for them is Berdichi because it is an elevation. Between Berdichi, in turn, there is a conditional divide where it is easiest to advance. It is precisely here that the enemy expects the main strike, and therefore yesterday he tried with all his might to hold back our troops in the Berdichi area, conducted counterattacks. The 47th Brigade, a mechanized brigade of the armed forces of Ukraine, was again seen in counterattacks. Another Abrams was shot down again, and this is because the enemy greatly fears this area and is doing all it can to disrupt further offensive actions. Overall, the tactics of the Ukrainian armed forces are beginning to take shape in a defensive war on the front line. They primarily have territorial defense forces, which have been scattered throughout Ukraine. Some of these units remain as a mobile reserve. They are using their so-called elite brigades, good punch fists, which are now dispersed all along the line of contact and with which they are trying to halt our advance, or at the very least to substantially weaken it. We see this in the Avdiivka sector, as well as in Artemovsk, in Zaporizhia, in Limansk, in Kupiansk. The enemy follows the same tactics everywhere. Thus far, it hasn't been able to change anything globally. Conversely, the enemy received a serious rebuttal. And by the way, there's a catch here, as it were. They're talking about two ends for creating a striking fist, requiring focus near the frontline confrontations. This is a good target, considering our expanded reconnaissance capabilities. To reconnaissance, identifying the enemy, we can strike cluster locations, which we've successfully done in areas like Avdiivka and Chasiv Yar. This also significantly weakens counterattacks enemy, and more importantly, it halts their elite brigades' capabilities, which is basically impossible to restore. This is a very critical point. And another thing I'd like to highlight is that it somehow slipped through between things, nobody really paying attention. Meanwhile, I think this is the most critical point, is a few days ago, our Air Force deployed a glide bomb effectively in Burluk. What's the significance of this event? The reality is that up to this point, from the position near the Russian Federation border in this case, over 40 km, all the glide bombs are ours. The troops had used not more than 15, well, perhaps 20 kilometers. Until this point, it was necessary to launch further into our territory in order to preserve aviation. The maximum flight range of these bombs of about 40 kilometers didn't allow this to be done any further. A strike of more than 40 kilometers suggests that either, well, maybe in this case our aerospace forces took a risk. Although this is unlikely, more likely our troops are testing some new version of glide bombs that fly much further. Why this is important? Well, I think everyone has already understood, because it significantly weakens the stability of the Ukrainian defense. Because now the deployment of any units to a depth of 40 kilometers is dangerous for the enemy, and this is very serious. It increases the tactical capabilities of our aviation and allows for a much more significant impact on the course of the fighting. If this is truly the case, and these were indeed tests, such bombs will appear in the spring. I really hope my guess is correct, but let's go back to the line of contact. The enemy tried to knock us out with counterattacks yesterday. We weren't successful in liberating the settlement of Berdichi, however. I think our troops will continue to attack in the Avdiivka sector while the enemy's defense here is fluctuating, cracking. And I am really hopeful that the line of defense in the area of Berdichi, Orlovka, and Tonka will be finally broken, and the enemy will have to retreat much further to the northwest. We also expect the escalation of hostilities in the Ocheretin area, because this is the key point of the enemy's defense in this sector. Taking control of it will nullify all these lines of defense in the area of Avdiivka and Donetsk.